Hey everyone, and welcome into the Reload podcast along with Nathan Gilslider and Marshall Scott. I'm Justin Southwell, and we are coming to you with big news because Oklahoma State has hired their next head football coach, Eric Morris from North Texas. The initial thoughts, real quick from me, I'll just say, thank goodness we did not have to wait for that Lane Kiffin domino to fall. We just discussed it on our last podcast, and I was thinking, man, if we could just hold out one more week. But Christmas came early, Thanksgiving came early because we announced that before Thanksgiving, and now we don't have to worry about who are we going to hire, all that stuff over the Thanksgiving Day dinner table talk. We get to talk about who the actual head coach is. So how fired up are you guys about that?
I'm stoked. Nathan's been dragging me into the Eric Morris camp for many a months now, with the quarterback acumen, with the ties to the state of Texas, with the ties to the Big 12, and just what a baller move by Chad Weiberg to get this done, before Thanksgiving. Yeah, I'm going to be grateful that I'm not going to be like 100% glued to my phone with portal stuff and potential assistance and all that stuff. I'll still be like 50% glued to my phone, but the stress of the big news is finally over. So yeah, outstanding work by Chad. I think he said on the radio with Robert this morning that it was sort of Morris's idea once the rumors started to come out that Morris was just like, hey, let's just rip this Band-Aid off. That way that he could be upfront and truthful with his team, which I think is a pretty cool move. Great hire from Chad Weiberg. One that this pod has been, we've been certainly, we didn't have any, sources that it was going to be Morris, but we were very hopeful that he was going to be the guy. And he is. And I think he'll do a great job in Stillwater.
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. Honestly, it's, we've talked so much about fit and about what that means for Oklahoma State and how important it is to a coach's success. One of the main reasons why I was filling our inbox with propaganda about Eric Morris was I just didn't see a better fit from any of the names that we saw out there, from the things that Chad Weiberg said that he wanted in a coach when he originally addressed everything, to what fans identify with as an Oklahoma State Cowboy and what you come to, hey, this is what we show up in Stillwater to watch, to what's so important about recruiting Texas well, hitting on quarterbacks, all of the above, right? I think that's really what it came down to. And we won't know if it's a great hire until maybe 2 or 3 years from now. But my goodness, from an onset of checking boxes, fitting everything Oklahoma State needs, there wasn't a better one in my mind, as you guys are well aware of. I've been up late watching UNT football games. I watched I've been watching them play Rice. I've been watching everything. And Thursday night, Friday night, 10 p.m., you name it. I've been self-scouting here for quite some time, and I'm pretty excited.
We went into this whole thing. I did not want a G6 coach. Now I'm feeling relieved that we're hiring this G6 coach, mostly because of the things that we had seen transpire across the year. But one, getting that offensive identity back that Oklahoma State has pretty much lacked since the Mason Rudolph era. I cannot wait. Now, this coaching search, it was a marathon, not a sprint, in the same way that we think about with other coaching searches. I kind of get the sense that this is what guys are going through, coaches are going through whenever they are recruiting players to come to Oklahoma State. Like, it's a marathon for them all the time, constantly going. And we've just got one position open for the head coach, and it's like, man, this is tough. We did it for 2 months. I can't imagine doing that for players, multiple players over the course of, your entire coaching career.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I was thinking about this because we've said often, like, how exhausted we are of, like, just this process. And it's not even us. This is the first time in 20 years we've had to do this. I don't know how, like, Auburn or, these other schools that have all these coaches still on buyouts. Like, I have no idea how they do this every 3 years. I'm exhausted. I want no part of this for several years. Like, let's get this going. I don't know how they do it.
Pretty incredible. Well, Marshall, you offered up your 5 thoughts on Oklahoma State hiring Eric Morris in the same way you kind of do for football games, basketball games. So I kind of wanted to run down your 5 thoughts, and we can kind of discuss those one at a time. Of course, we kind of already touched on it with point number 1 being an outstanding hire, but care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, there's not too much more. I think, pretty much the entire sentiment of the national writers, of everybody, was like, wow, Oklahoma State really killed this. I mentioned getting out ahead of the Lane Kiffin domino. It feels like that's coming, and who knows really what happens after that. So, I think just I don't want to step onto some of my other thoughts, but yeah, I think just overall the fact that Oklahoma State got Eric Morris, this guy that apparently, if you believe some reports, Arkansas was also very interested in, who, we'll get to that a little bit later, but to get it done before Thanksgiving, I think it's a, quote unquote home run hire, whatever that means. Like Nathan said earlier, we don't know, how this will work. See Brian Kelly at LSU, it's not a guarantee, but from the onset, this was a really, really good hire.
How about the quarterbacks position he's had success with? Essentially, guys going back to Cam Ward, a 0-star recruit turned into #1 draft pick overall. You got Pat Mahomes, Baker Mayfield. Now we've got Drew Mustelmaker at North Texas, who's tearing it up and is a top 5 quarterback who hasn't even played quarterback in high school. So he's kind of a quarterback whisperer. I'm most excited about not the potential that he could continue to do that, but maybe that he doesn't have to do that. And that the fact that he's got this quarterback acumen, people are going to take notice of that. And then top quarterbacks, 4 or 5-star quarterbacks, are going to want to play for this guy. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's one thing, that the fact that he is capable of finding diamonds in the rough, I think is a good quality to have for any coach. Oklahoma State apparently is going to be more in flux with cash, moving forward in this NIL era. But I think, the ability to find somebody that nobody else is really looking at and developing that person into a really good player, I think that's good, no matter, if you're in the NFL, to find an undrafted free agent that turns into it. Like that's just a strong quality to have as a football coach in general. So I think that's a big plus for Morris.
When we look at one things that we've talked about often about where Oklahoma State needs to progress as a whole, right? That's the evaluation of talent and where we want to spend our money, how much you want to, all that type, right? And we can get into a little bit of the GM role that, we got some reports on that. But to your point, Justin, like, hey, if you use the same process he's using, and I've got a 4-star or I've got this or that, and this guy's getting LSU money and all these other things, and I've got this other guy here that I've got graded on my own valuation that is $500,000 cheaper, and allows you to spend that money maybe in the portal to go get an instant playmaker or whatever that may be, right? That's when it becomes so paramount that you have these things in place already that he's shown that he's done at an extremely high level. So, while I don't think you have to do as much as he did, you still have that tool in the toolbox to use that on your own measuring stick, not just go by 247 or whatever rating system it is. This is a guy I want because he falls in line with what I believe a good quarterback is.
Yeah, this is a quote that he gave on. He's on some Barstool show, I think last week. He said, whenever he got asked about, finding these quarterbacks out of nowhere, he said, I think we have a great process here and we're committed to that process. The quarterback recruiting happens so early nowadays, and everybody's concerned about what Rivals and 247 rates these guys, and are they bringing in a 4-star or a 5-star? We don't care about that. We look at some different qualities in a quarterback. It's worked out good. I kind of learned this from Mike Leach and Cliff Kingsbury back in the day. We were a lot more patient with people. We don't care what they're rated. And then he mentions, like, he thinks a lot of this has to do with intelligence, the ability to process information quickly. Like that's maybe what he's more into than, hey, can this guy throw the ball? Because he mentioned there are a lot of guys who can throw the ball nowadays. So it seems like he's more worried about, what's going on, between the ears. And I think that's a good quality to have.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the fact that he's tied in with Patrick Mahomes, who has a quarterback coach, you've got that connection, and this guy is getting the best quarterbacks brought his way. Here's a guy you want to take a look at. Go over here to Oklahoma State, get with Eric Morris, and continue to develop under that. I think that's a massive pipeline that has enormous potential for Oklahoma State because of how important the quarterback position is in college football.
Yeah, speaking of Pat Mahomes, he gave a quote on Morris earlier this month. He said he gives you confidence to go out there and be yourself and play the game the way you're supposed to play it, and he'll change the offense for that. It's not surprising to me that he's had so much success. So whenever, potential, GOAT quarterback is saying that stuff, that's A, it feels really good if you're an Oklahoma State fan to hear that, and then B, is probably elite for recruiting that, Patrick Mahomes is speaking so highly of this guy.
Well, and you, just to go on that quote, things we've talked about and Oklahoma State fans have felt the pain of is, let's just say we go through it this year. Our quarterback goes down. You have everything molded around a guy that can run and do these things. And you have a guy like Zane come in who doesn't have the same skill set. We have shown the inability to be able to change our offense or do the things that highlight somebody else's successes or what they do well, right? We saw that even whenever we had Illingsworth would come in after, Spencer would, have a high ankle sprain or something, right? And it just like our inability to do that has really held us back. So that was one of my most exciting things when you look at and you read and you listen to all these interviews like I've sent you sent you guys on Coach Morris, is like his ability to get the best out of those players and adapt and do different things. Because if you watch this offense, it's not just 2007 Texas Tech. It's evolved, which is what you want to see, and that's so exciting for us.
Yeah, a lot of 2 running back sets that you never saw in 2007 with Texas Tech. You're seeing that at North Texas. So I love the fact that we're able to adapt to that. And I love the fact that he's coming to Oklahoma State, historically has great running backs, so that you have multiple sets where you've got multiple running backs. It's going to be a ton of fun. So excited on that. I'm going to skip point number 2 because we kind of touched on that already. But point number 3, OSU's greater than Arkansas.
It seems that way based on some of the reports from different national people that were saying Morris was very high up in Arkansas's list. I think one report has come out today that Golish, I'm not reporting this as fact. It's only been one report and I haven't seen other people like stack on top of it, but I think one report came out today that Golish could be headed to Arkansas. That happening so quickly after OSU got Morris would, lead me to believe that, hey, Arkansas probably missed out on the guy that it wanted. So it's seeming like the SEC letters in this particular instance didn't matter all that much. And I think the fact that OSU going 3-9 last year and still finding a way in one of those 3 games to beat Arkansas probably tells you all you need to know about these programs, that Oklahoma State in its downs of downs still scrapped out a win against Arkansas somehow. So yeah, I don't really have any big beef with Arkansas. It was just like that was who Oklahoma State was most closely tied to in this search. A lot of that, I'm sure, is due to proximity. And it seems like Oklahoma State greater than Arkansas.
Exactly. It does appear at the surface level, what it appears is that when coaches were looking at Oklahoma State versus an Arkansas and things like that, Chad Weiberg did an unbelievable job of presenting a package of Oklahoma State, what he's got coming behind, whether that be NIL, whether that be coaching salaries, whether that be alignment from boosters, which is what you hear a lot about with Arkansas. That was what they lack, and it kind of refutes kind of what a lot of people locally have felt for a while, and even what you started hearing early on in the search is kind of like poor school out in the middle of nowhere Oklahoma that is all fractured and these things. Don't get me wrong, we have issues at the athletic department and we need to get those fixed. But it seems to me that at the very minimum, Chad Weiberg was able to do that from a surface level and present a package of cohesion and of what Oklahoma State is and can be. Honestly, every fan needs to give themselves a pat on the back, because Chad talked about it multiple times,
1,000%.
and you don't go through 2 losing seasons like we've had and still have a proper representation of support and a fan base that still cares so deeply about Oklahoma State, whether it be the shirtless, the banana people, the whatever it may be, us still showing out as fans and still being there, it played a part. And Chad Weiberg talked about that several times, about whenever I went to these meetings, whether it be with the agents or the actual coaches themselves, they were already telling them that the support that Oklahoma State shows from a fan base was such a positive thing in this. And I definitely think it played a part in us possibly winning out over a school like Arkansas that at the very least is going to be able to offer similar money, if not more, in a contract.
Yeah, and you already have Arkansas Stadium seats 76,000 fans. So we're putting out consistently 45,000 fans with our smaller stadium capacity. So we're sitting around 85% of our capacity probably. They can fill that with maybe about 60%. Quick math off the top of my head as far as what Arkansas fans could potentially do to show up to make it look like, yeah, we've got as many fans, as Oklahoma State that are invested in this. And it's just that, yeah, Chad Weiberg has done such an incredible job of boosting it up, but very much like props to the fans for being able to show up through all of that. Couldn't agree more on that statement. And then as far as the national perspective goes, I don't necessarily always look at the ESPN and the kind of the talking heads surrounding that, because we know ESPN and SEC are just right there together. So I essentially take all of that with a grain of salt. What bothers me is guys like Joel Klatt put out a podcast yesterday, didn't mention anything about the hiring, and there's still time that he probably will touch on that. But Josh Pate had an hour and a half long podcast yesterday, spent a good 45 seconds on Eric Morris going to Oklahoma State, and then immediately shifted about talking about Arkansas and who they might go after and why you'd go after Alex Golish and all this stuff. I get it. It's just like breaking news and you don't have a ton of time to dive into it, but it deserves a little bit more than that. We're probably going to spend close to an hour talking about it. Obviously, we're deeply invested in Oklahoma State football, but 45 seconds is just kind of like really interesting.
Yeah, I think from a national perspective, I think the chase is somewhat more intriguing than the hire. I listened to Pate this morning as well, but I think that will be somewhat similar. They'll linger on the Kiffin hire for months.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, exactly.
but I think it'll be somewhat consistent with like James Franklin got hired and there was like a day or two that people were talking about James Franklin and then just moved on. I think to the national people, the chase is more interesting than the result to a certain extent.
Yeah, and the fact that Oklahoma State, like we've already touched on it, but how far we've fallen in 2 years, the perception that our program is not anywhere where it needs to be, what the expectations are. And so I'm excited to see how quickly we can rise back up.
Yeah, and honestly, that's been one of my what really grinds my gears about the perception, because Coach played into that, Coach Gundy, and he really leaned into it, and he did us no favors as a university the last couple of years, acting like we don't have and we can't do. Guess what? Whenever he talks to guys like Josh Pate or whatever it may be, or his representation, that's what they believe and that's what they see. And so then you're like, well, okay, doesn't really matter. They're not going to do anything. And it's just not the case. And it never has been.
No,
And
we have a logo too after the 2021 Fiesta Bowl win. Continue with that momentum. Even if you're down a little bit, you just played in the Big 12 championship game and with Ollie Gordon. And it's kind of like, what happened? What happened to that mindset? And yeah, I couldn't agree more that was Gundy played a part into that. All right. Point number 4 here. Who all is coming with him? So this does stink for North Texas. I think that we can all agree with that. I get that there are jaded North Texas fans who think that why would he go to Oklahoma State? It's a lateral move. Quit kidding yourself. That's just complete garbage. But I feel bad for North Texas. The fact that they're going through this, that this happened right now, the timing of it it's just unfortunate. But this is the reality of what we have to work with. And I wish nothing but success for North Texas and continuing to move forward, but especially in the playoffs. If they get to the playoffs, I think there was a tweet from Buffalo K-State. Do you want him to just lose immediately so he can get to work here, or do you want him to have success in the playoffs? I think it's great if he has more success in the playoffs. You're not going to get people to come in overnight anyway. We just talked about how it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think that the more success you have in the playoffs, the better it looks for Coach Eric Morris, the better it looks for Oklahoma State, the more Oklahoma State has on the minds of people that are going to be talking about Eric Morris in connection with Oklahoma State, the national media, national perception. Go have as much success as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's particularly the case considering he's, juggling both jobs right now. Chad Weiberg talked to Robert this morning. I don't even know if I've already said that on this thing, but, he mentioned he's working 2 jobs right now. He's evaluating Oklahoma State's roster. He's, thinking about recruiting and the portal and all that stuff. And he's UNT's coach. So I think the fact that he's juggling both jobs, and it's probably sucks for him because being a football coach of one team, I imagine, pretty time consuming, obviously, much more with 2 teams. But I think that fact that he's already confirmed Oklahoma State's coach, I'm obviously cool with him continuing to just, play this out. I hope nothing but the best for North Texas. Like you said, it really stinks. That's just sort of like an issue with college football right now, is that if you're a group of 5 program, you get, and you have a successful season, you get rewarded by having to smash the reset button, and you've got to find a new coach and a new roster, and you've got to try and do it all over again. So I imagine it's very underwhelming for a group of 5 fans to just be like, okay, I'm invested in this team, and now it's totally gone. But this is just sort of how the game's played. There are a lot of really good young players at North Texas right now. Obviously, Drew Mestemaker, he's throwing balls so far that I forgot that you were allowed to throw the football that far. Caleb Hawkins is 6'2", 200-pound freshman running back from Oklahoma. I imagine him standing in proximity to Rodney Fields would look sick. And then, they've got Wyatt Young, a true sophomore wide receiver who's got 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, seems to, play that slot like, Eric Morris, I would assume, is a really big fan of his. So it really stinks. Tyler wrote a pretty good thing on our site of some guys to sort of just keep an eye on if they do hit the portal. But yeah, it stinks for North Texas, but it's just sort of, the way the game is played these days.
Yeah, it's we've felt it also at Oklahoma State, right? I mean, we had once Jim Knowles left, I mean, we had guys going, starting at Washington, at LSU, at Notre Dame, USC, you know what I mean? And so like we're not just talking about anybody just leaving. Like these guys are going and starting at other Power 5 playoff national championship games. You know what I mean? And so we've unfortunately felt that aspect as well and seen a little bit of it this year so far. And it sucks. It really does. And I don't envy UNT. It especially their fans. Like this is an unbelievably special season that they're having once in a generation, quite honestly. And to have this cloud now over it and questioning whether he's all in and whatnot. And I can tell you, just because a guy sends out an offer for Oklahoma State doesn't mean he's any less like looking into game plans and these things for UNT to get them to beat Temple and win their conference championship. Like
he'd be recruiting at North Texas right now if he wasn't recruiting.
It's exactly right. So it just changed the name he's recruiting for, but he's still doing the game day process. But it'd be hard not to feel jaded if you're UNT, right? Like, oh, greatest thing ever, and now we don't even get to enjoy it. But that's kind of a sidebar. But I think it starts and stops.
It's a good sidebar, though. It's an important note. Like it's not something to gloss over for sure.
Yeah, but I think obviously it starts and stops with the quarterback. We've had such poor quarterback play. We're gonna have to pay up. I mean, this kid has absolutely lit it up, and he deserves everything he's gonna get. I mean, the guy, Marshall, I'm sure you guys have probably put some more out about his personal story, and if you've looked at it at all, like it's incredible where he's come from and how far he's come. So he's not gonna just give us the hometown discount. I wouldn't assume. I'm sure he wants to stay with the guy that gave him his shot and has done all this. But Oklahoma State's going to have to pay up like we haven't paid before for a quarterback. And then, like you said, you've got this great running back who does very well in a system that I think a guy like Rodney Fields fits his rushing system very well as well. So running back is one of those positions that Oklahoma State has done very, very well at for as long as we can all remember. So, and then you look at a wide receiver like that, and you compare him with our other slot that we're hoping will stay here at Oklahoma State, and maybe you're onto something and go spend the money and get some guys. Because Justin, I think you might either you put a tweet out or you said something to us, but it's like, how many guys are going to look at this and be like, yeah, I want to go play in this system now? And a lot of these guys that came to Oklahoma State in the last couple of years were living off past memories of Oklahoma State, not current memories of our offense. But you're talking about a guy coming in here that's like, hey, I just had the number one offense in the entire country. I'd like to throw you the ball. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's do this. So it's really exciting times from that standpoint of now, like, hey, now guys maybe want to come to Stillwater again.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, that you think that we wouldn't necessarily get the hometown discount, I think you call it, but there's so much that goes into the relationship of a guy that gave you a chance. I feel like it's almost 95, 99% guarantee that he's going to come to Oklahoma State. Now I'm saying you can't get him at a major discount, but maybe you're not going to be paying as much as what some other high profile school would potentially be giving, because you also have to manage like the rest of your roster, making sure you're paying those guys accordingly. And I know that we've got maybe deeper pockets than what people believe we have, but it's kind of like a give and take kind of relationship there, I think too. So,
I don't think he's going to like max OSU out, but I do think we're going to need to pay him commensurate of what he needs to be paid, right? And you even look at guys, the possibility of the quarterbacks that are going to be moving around in college and not going to the NFL, like a Levitt, I just saw an article today that said Raiola out of Nebraska might be going to the portal, and then you've got, if Nussmeier ends up going to the NFL, or if he just leaves LSU, I mean, or Sellers from South Carolina, or the Florida quarterback who is the number one rated quarterback in the entire nation is a 5-star. I mean, there's going to be a lot of big name quarterbacks that are out there. So, and he's going to be up there, and we're going to have to pay for it. But I do think, to your point, Justin, he will do, if it's close or if it's within a ballpark, he would stick with Coach Morse in that relationship and the offense that he already knows. And my Lord, Oklahoma State fans, we need that to hit the ground running. Like, we really, really need it.
And I just thought of this. It's a little bit off topic. We didn't have it, listed in the 5 thoughts here, but I'm thinking about the quarterback and the depth that comes with that. How important do you think depth is to him, to you, really? But it's also like I'm thinking about Ole Miss. They went and poached Spencer Sanders from us. He could have stayed here as a starter and chose to go to Ole Miss as a backup. Do you bring in somebody like potentially Dylan Raiola? Or, I don't know. I'm throwing that out there. That's a bit far-fetched, I think, but maybe not necessarily sticking with the guys that are on our roster currently who have kind of proven that they're not maybe up to OSU's expectations of playing quarterback here.
Dylan Raiola is, he gets a lot of comparisons to Pat Mahomes. Obviously,
I think he has Pat Mahomes quarterback coach, actually.
Okay, well, there it is. No, but yeah, I'm still team Mestmaker. I imagine those two aren't going to end up on the same roster next year just for financial purposes for both of those guys.
For sure.
But I don't hate the idea.
Yeah, not at all. I to your point, I think that's one thing that we're going to have to do a much better job of. I mean, I don't think a guy like Zane would even stay. I wouldn't assume. But I mean, honestly, you look at it, he would fit way better in this type of system. But it's you need to go get a guy like a.
Do you think Haas is going to stay? Consider staying with.
I don't, but at the same time, if he did, I would completely trust Coach Morse to adapt to his. Because I mean, even Mestamaker has rushing touchdowns. Like if it's there, he goes. He very well could, for all we know. But I think of a guy like a perfect fit, in my opinion, would be like a guy like a Garrett Rangel. He's been at a university for 3 years, had some starts, maybe didn't bust through, but has shown some talent, and you're able to have that as a backup, or a guy like that we saw.
Does it give you any pause for concern that he didn't play any for Virginia Tech this year?
A little bit, but I
wasn't very good. They had a chance to go to a backup, and they just left him on the bench. I thought that was kind of weird.
It was weird, but I just meant like from a standpoint of I think they brought him in under the same guys, right? Like, hey, kid had several starts at this level and knows what it's about. He can come in a short off season and be a great backup.
I see what you mean. Kind of that prototypical who you're looking for is. I got you.
Yep.
Well, last one here, point number 5, #keep Doug home. Marshall, you're a big fan of Doug Meacham and everything that he's done for the university over the course of this past year. What reasons would you like to see Meacham stick around for another year? Or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever.
I got some pushback on this on Twitter, and I'm totally cool with that. I understand that the on-field product has not been good. I don't know that that's entirely Doug Meacham's fault, considering last year happened. Then they lost to Tulsa. He was the offensive coordinator at that point, I guess. But he says he already watches North Texas tape because of the similarities between the system he runs and the system that Morris runs. He obviously knows Stillwater really well, or should know Stillwater really well. Just got back after being gone for so long. I just think that he's handled it. Has he mishandled some things? I'm sure, but I think given all that's gone on with the portal opening in the middle of the season, OSU firing its 21-year head coach, I think he's kept the band together at a decent enough clip where I hope that there's so many positions on these staffs nowadays. I just think that if he wants to stay in Stillwater, maybe he could. I don't know if he could get an offensive coordinator role at like a G5 or something like that. If that's what he wants to do, if he wants to get back in that realm, then go for it. But if he wants to stay in Stillwater, I just think that with all these different positions that there are on coaching staffs, I think Oklahoma State should try and find a way to keep him around. I just think he could add some value to Morris, given that they run a similar system. He knows Stillwater a little bit better. So yeah, that's just sort of where I am on that. I understand people's pauses whenever they look at the on-field product right now and go like, why would you want to retain that guy at all? I totally get that to his extent, but I just think it was so far off the rails before Meacham got here that it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He got dealt all those coaches did. I saw a post from Cooper Bassett today, and it really tugged at my heart a little bit, obviously, because love Coop and he loves Oklahoma State and wanted nothing but the best. And I'm sure it hurts these guys that how that season transpired, and there's already a relationship there. They know each other, Coach Morris and Coach Meacham. So I do think that there's a possibility. Coach Meach's done a great job recruiting Texas through the years, and especially the receiver position. So I mean, you never know. I think that's part of all this process is who Coach Morris wants to bring with him. We've already seen some reports of some defensive staff that are coming over. One of them being G. Rich, coming back home, big fan, defensive end coach. So we'll see how this all plays out. I think there's going to be plenty, and honestly, I think some of it, it's going to be up to them. He's going to take a pretty big haircut on the pay, not being the offensive coordinator or associate head coach. So it's going to be kind of how much he wants to stay and do. And, you look at a guy like Coach Bowen, the unbelievable job that he's done. It's really easy for interim coaches to sit there and be like, hey, you guys are free, do whatever you want. And some teams respond and you're like loose and stuff like that. But that's not a long-term way to play. It appears to me that like Coach Bowen has actually been the one to like kind of nail things down. Like he's got them playing more fundamentally sound at a time when they really don't have any incentive to do
You wouldn't
so.
expect them to, and they're showing up.
And he's done that, which has been so impressive to me.
And add on to that fact that Oklahoma State's defense has been basically broken since Jim Knowles left. It's not like it was just bad this year and then Bowen took over and sort of righted the ship a little bit. It was like horrendous last year. They're getting, 7 point whatever yards per carry ran against them. So like the fact that Bowen has turned this thing around so quickly after it's not just been, it wasn't just 3 games of poor performance. It's been happening for a while now, basically since Jim Knowles left. I think that's been super impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. If we've got any say, we absolutely do not. But if they're listening, if there's a coaches that I would love to stay, Clint Bowen in some capacity, I think. And when you hear him talk, man, like he had me fired up. And then we talked about it, like Coach Osman on the defensive line, guy's a baller, and then the offensive line staff, like those guys love Oklahoma State through and through. They are, Cowboys, and they want the best. And I really hope they get that opportunity. And we know the coaching fraternity and coaching profession, that's not always the case, but we'll just have to wait and see, because the next couple weeks, putting together a staff, trying to get this recruiting cycle hopefully back on track, and then you've got the window that opens up, it's going to be a lot. So we'll just take it in and do the best we can.
I think there are more spots on the staff that are available now, because back in our day, you only had a certain number. It seems like that number has expanded. So I think that there is potential for some of these guys to be able to stick around. Ultimately, you can't decide based on wins and losses and the product that you like, the final. I think that really, if you want to get down to it, you probably have to consult with somebody like Coach Glass to see what's going on behind the scenes, to figure out, hey, is Meacham somebody worth sticking around? It's essentially a job interview, like what he's been doing over the past 8, 9, 10 weeks, however long he's been the interim head coach. You kind of consult with Coach Glass to figure out if he's somebody worth sticking around. Now, what we see based on the product on the field, yeah, probably is worth keeping some of those guys on the offensive line, because we've seen the improvement of offensive line play. Whenever you look at the past couple of years, we just talked about it with Bowen and the defense. And it's harder to evaluate somebody like Doug Meacham being over the top, and he had to delegate the offensive play calling responsibilities. So what kind of value does he bring? I think that Coach Glass is somebody you can lean on for something like that. So, all right, real quick ad break here to let you know that the Reload podcast is brought to you by Brewster Consulting Group. Do any of these sound familiar at your company? Our processes are manual and inefficient with no documentation. Our data reporting takes forever and isn't accurate. We hear all the hype about AI, but have no clue what it actually means for our business. Our projects always run over time and over budget. If so, talk with our friends at Brewster Consulting Group. They help build organizations that run like well-oiled machines with clear processes, reliable data and reporting, and technology that actually works for you. Their team of 6 Sigma Black Belts, PMP certified project managers, and seasoned data engineers have delivered solutions that are built to last for local clients like the Tulsa International Airport and Medify. They've also delivered solutions for large international enterprises like DP World. Even better, Brewster was founded and is run by a proud OSU alum and season ticket holder. Learn more about them at brewsterconsulting.com. or learn more about their methodologies by connecting with them at Brewster Consulting Group on LinkedIn or YouTube. All right, guys, we kind of talked about it a little bit as far as who we would want to come with Coach Eric Morris in the sense of players. But I really want to focus on, Nate, you hinted at it earlier, bigger picture. We've talked about defense a little bit. We've talked about some of the offensive staff. How about the GM? How great would it be if we could bring in North Texas GM? And it sounds like there have been reports that are already confirming that. How excited are you about that potential move?
I think it's everything. I think it's such a big deal to get this locked down. And if we, like, when you talk about, Coach Moore started talking about, we have a process in place. We trust the process of how we evaluate certain positions. And like to have that hit the ground running right now at Oklahoma State, and you've already got that relationship built with that GM, it's huge. And that was one of the first, I text you guys like, okay, now tell me about the GM. It was like 30 minutes after the announcement, he's the coach. It's just so important to me. I think it's such a big deal to have a guy that's done it and is all in on what's being done right now in the state of football. We can hate it. I don't enjoy it. I don't like it. But this guy, this GM, from what I understand, really has his own process and really is bought into how things go now. And that's going to be so refreshing for Oklahoma State football fans and the athletic department, for a coach and a GM that are completely bought in on how things work right now. And so I think it's crucial to hitting this window in hopefully getting us back on track.
It sort of feels like Oklahoma State is finally like a modern, college football team, that they're moving in that direction. They sort of tiptoed in it this past, I guess, couple of years, where they started maybe playing the NIL game a little bit heavier. But yeah, it feels like Oklahoma State is finally like, hey, we're playing the same game that everybody else is playing now. So that feels great. Yeah, Raj Murdy is his name. Has just got to North Texas this year, was previously at TCU. And there's a fun note on his UNT profile that he helped the 2025 recruiting class at TCU rank as number one. That was a weird way to word this sentence. TCU's recruiting class ranked first in the Big 12, with him there by all the major services, On 3, 247, and Rivals, and was the 24 class in the country. Oklahoma State fans and, our website in general, especially, I think back to Kyle and Carson whenever they were running the pod back in the day, has just been asking for like, hey, nobody's asking to get a top 5 recruiting class in the country, but it need to be hanging around the 20s. So if they can get to that, then holy crap, Oklahoma State might actually start cooking with some gas and propane. So I just think that, Mike Gundy did such a good job of doing more with less, but he didn't have to do that. So I'm excited to see what Oklahoma State could do in a modern thing, and with a guy who can draw a little bit more out of less. So I don't know. That's a super exciting aspect to me. It's an aspect that I haven't really had to think about too much, and Oklahoma State fans hadn't had to think about too much, because they haven't been in this modern era of college football. So I don't even know exactly what I'm excited about, but I am excited to sort of finally take these steps into modernizing Oklahoma State football.
I 100% am as well. And those were the expectations before NIL became a thing and rev sharing and all that stuff. And Coach Gundy had the mindset where he convinced the fans across the board, you can't recruit people to Stillwater. Nothing can be further from the truth. We've seen it from Steve Lutz. We've seen it from David Taylor. We're seeing it from Chad Weiberg, essentially propping up Oklahoma State for what we potentially can be. The expectations back then were, dude, please just get us somewhere in the 20s, 25 range. We would do amazing. Expectation now should be sky's the limit. Why not bring in the top 5? There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do stuff like that now that we have somebody in place, young and hungry, and then having a GM like that to go off. There's sky's the limit, man. I'm so excited about this potential, what could be going on for Oklahoma State in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because you even look, Josh Holiday, Kenny Gajewski. Our national champion cross country, again, getting huge classes. And don't get me wrong, football is a completely different animal than any of those sports when it comes to, and the money and all that it takes. But the problem is that Coach Gundy showed us what he could do early on, and then through the 11s and, on after that. And then it was just like, yeah, I can't do it. It's like, you can't or won't. Those are completely different things.
Because you have been doing it. It was weird. It's just weird. Yeah.
And so living in the 40s and 45s is just not going to cut it. And there's so much data that says if you aren't in this range of talent pool, you have no chance. And we saw that, because even if you look at our 2023 team, that was a lot of smoke and mirrors, boys. And when we actually got up against a team like Texas, we got punched in the mouth. You know what I mean? And you saw that talent disparity.
Yep.
And so that has to change. And that's why I'm so excited about this new outlook. Like Marshall said, modernizing our athletic department for football, and everybody getting on board and pulling the rope in the same direction of this is what college football is now. No, you don't have to love it, but you got to get on board or you got to get out. And that's just what we got to do.
Yeah, Cade Cunningham played basketball in Stillwater while the program was under sanctions and hadn't won very much of late. You can get guys to Stillwater. You can do it. I understand they hired his brother. I'm hire as many brothers as you want to. You can actually just pay the guys now, so that that takes that whole aspect out of it. But yeah, you can get guys in Stillwater. I know that because I watched Cade Cunningham play on a team that wasn't very good outside of him and had sanctions looming over him anyway. So yeah, you can get guys to Stillwater, and I hope Eric Morris does that.
Yeah, and one thing, and we can kind of move on, but one thing that Coach often talked about is like NFL guys are not having many NFL guys want to know, if you come to a program, can you get me to where I want to go? And Coach, one of the reasons why he was so good and one of the reasons why it was so frustrating is that was never his main outlook. He's like, well, if you go through our process and it happens, we put guys in the NFL eventually, yada, yada, yada. Like, now you have to be able to show guys, like, this is my plan for you. By year 3, I want you to be all Big 12. And if you're all Big 12, his statistics show you have a 30% chance of being a first-round draft pick, or whatever that may be. Like,
Right.
you have to be able to do that now. And I see that happening with this new regime that's coming in.
We talked about the expectations for recruiting moving forward, but let's look ahead directly to next season, 2026. What are your expectations for next season? Wins and losses, as far as Eric Morris. What do you bring to the table in year 1?
The standard is the standard. The floor is a bowl game. I'd like to think that it'd be around the 8 wins stuff, and that's already like, whoa, how this team hasn't won a conference game in 2 years. So I totally get that, but I think the floor is 6 wins in a bowl, even for next year, even the quick turnaround. Obviously, the portal is going to have to play a big part in that. But yeah, I think it's a prime example of the standard is the standard.
I love that, Marshall.
Where did I learn that from? I don't know.
Man after my own heart. But I completely agree. And I tell you, I'm sure when Coach Morris addresses, his standard is going to be excellence. And that's what you want from your coaches, right? Now, we've got a long ways to go. But when we talked about, you bring in a quarterback right away, you bring in a wide receiver, you bring in a couple guys here, you bring in some of these guys that I've been told and heard rumors that want to come back to the state of Oklahoma, but yada, 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 maybe even some of this recruiting class, that starts turning around pretty quickly. But I agree. I think you get to 6 wins next year, and then you keep moving that standard, and the standard is, hey, this is the worst we should be, and then you go up from there. But I think realistically, I do think that's a realistic next step to do that.
I also see similarities, I think, maybe to Kenny Dillingham in a way, where he comes in his first year, I think he went 3-9, but then immediately turned it around and they won 11 games. They went 11-3. They still have only lost 3 games this year, so a little bit different situation whenever you're got the Big 12 championship in play and the playoffs and stuff like that. But they were giving Texas a game at the end of that year in the playoffs, compared to Oklahoma State, who you just mentioned got blown out in the Big 12 championship game just a year prior. So I can see it turning into one of those things where, like, this is an immediate flip switch. Like, let's go. 6 should be the floor. And whenever you're looking at the resources and things like that of what North Texas, what he has had there and how he's been able to turn it up pretty quickly, I don't see why you can't get a head start with Oklahoma State. Now, I understand you got Oregon is on the schedule again, but you got teams like Tulsa, who you should beat, Murray State, who you should absolutely beat. And then you're kind of going through your normal Big 12 gauntlet. You've got some teams that are on the higher end, like Texas Tech, but then you've got UCF, West Virginia, Kansas, Iowa State, Houston, Arizona State's going to be up there, Iowa State, like Kansas State, Colorado. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to win 6 games. So if that doesn't fire you up, I don't know what else will.
Okay, yeah. Even if it is another like semi-down year for Oklahoma State, I hope that a semi-down year in the Eric Morris era the scores will look like 45-42. If they lose 45-42 every game and they still go 1-9, I'll be a lot more entertained at least than what's happening on the field right now.
Well, exactly. Just take last week for example. God bless him. But it's like, you got to 14 points and it was like, that might be all we got. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like such a depressing feeling of like, got to hold on. And I agree. So much of it's going to be like, just let's see some points put up. Let's see some let's see some things going. You know, we don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be, anything like that yet. But I just, there's going to be an eye test to growth and getting them better. But at the end of the day, you guys brought it up. The standard is the standard at Oklahoma State. Thanks to Coach Gundy, he raised the standard. And Coach Gundy, this is going to sound kind of weird, but Coach Gundy is the reason why Eric Morris chose Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Because Coach Gundy showed you can win at a high level at Oklahoma State, and you can do it for a long time if you want to. And if Coach Gundy had not done that, I don't believe that the top, air quotes, top G6, G5, G7, whatever it is now, coach picks Oklahoma State.
Yep.
So, you know, a lot of things we can be upset with about Coach Gundy, but Coach Gundy is the reason why we were part of the reason why we were sought after, and when we put our names out there.
Fly like a G6. That's how I remember it. So it's been a while since I felt fly like a G6, and we finally can. And guys, it was great hanging out with you on my lunch break, but I've got to get back to work. So we're going to have plenty of time to talk more about Eric Morris, everything he brings to the table. We'll probably have a megapod soon. That's the rumor. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. We are getting ready to head into this full steam ahead, long off season. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but hang with us for that whole time. Like, share, subscribe, show your support in that way. We appreciate you as always. Keep those pistols firing and remember to reload. Go Pokes.